Mini episode 442 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by the Sports Train, the finest pure sports talk show on both terrestrial and internet radio. Follow them on the web at thesportstrain.net.
The FDH Lounge. You want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
All right, everybody, welcome back into the FDH Lounge. Rick Morris and Kyle Ross with part 2 out of 3 of our NFL win total preview for next year. I know I said at the start of part 1 that it was a 2-part series, but that was before I saw how long we were going on the first one.
This isn't in my script, Tony.
Yeah. Yeah, called an audible there at the end.
It'll be 4 parts by the end of it.
It probably will. You're going, how come they said it was 3 parts only? That's how things
People
go,
just be
folks.
confused, yes. We must
Freeform-
drive content.
Yeah, freeform broadcasting. You got to love it. So we start with Detroit, which in my rudimentary grasp of the alphabet, I initially thought came before Denver. But resuming ourselves here by going alphabetically, it is Detroit that comes up first in part 2. And
After we finished with Denver in part 1.
Yes, after we did. What's the win total you found for them, K-Dog?
8.5, over plus 110, under minus 130.
Not surprising, because it's a tough division. I got them at 8-8, so it's not real hard for me to say under. Although, again, I got them pretty close.
Yeah,
to
that's
the
pretty
number,
close.
but
I mean, that's pretty close.
Again, for all the teams we've talked about, nobody, not Chicago, not anybody exemplifies this more than them. All defense, or I'm sorry, all offense, no defense. They have some defensive parts here. Sue is pretty awesome. Fairley is coming along well. The secondary blows.
Although
still some
they-
holes at linebacker.
With the secondary, you talk about the Browns staying pat with their receivers.
Yeah.
Everyone was criticizing the Lions DBs, and they stood pat, and they cut a few guys. They cut who they cut from the secondary, but they Houston.
Yeah, I think so. You're putting me on the spot here, but yeah, I do remember there being some cuts, but it's a thing of...
But so they seem to like their starting corners more than everyone else does, which again always makes me scratch my head a little bit. Maybe they know something we don't.
Well, I just liken that to some people like the smell of their own farts. I mean, it doesn't really necessarily prove anything.
Okay.
But no, I just, again, they're an extreme example of offense over defense. If I thought that they were going to be more than like having 4 or 5 really awesome guys on the defense and a bunch of other holes, if I thought it was going to be more than that, I'd pick Detroit maybe even to win the division, because this offense has a chance to be video game-esque by adding Eric Ebron in there this year at tight end. But, again, and to whatever extent, Golden Tate in there for Nate Burleson. That's
an upgrade. Golden Tate had a very good year for Seattle last year.
It's an upgrade.
I mean, off the field, it was a little controversial maybe if you
yeah.
read some of the blogs. But so you really like Chicago.
I like Chicago more than Detroit. It's interesting here.
Because I think they're very comparable. And I like Detroit's offense a little better.
I might like it a little better, but...
And I like their defense a little better in Detroit, too.
See, but as much as I don't have regard for the Bears' defense, I still like it better than Detroit's. They don't have as many glaring holes to me. Detroit has some really supersonic-type players and some guys that are like CBL or CFL quality, so... It scares me. They don't have a complete team defensively by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay, addition by subtraction right off the bat in getting rid of Jim Schwartz. A terrible head coach who had no business coaching this team.
Only recent coach to make the playoffs there in Detroit.
Yeah, and what'd he do after starting 5-0? He's like 8 million games under 500 at that time. And he got embarrassed by Jim Harbaugh.
Jim Harbaugh pulled a cheap shot on him there.
No
sportsmanship.
How do you know what Jim Schwartz said to him? Might have said something about might have said something disparaging about his family.
I rather doubt that's the case.
Anyway, although Jim Caldwell is not exactly my favorite.
Black Seaford.
Yeah. I think he's still an upgrade over Schwartz. Schwartz was just had no discipline, lost games for his team. As a coach, you can't lose games for your team. He lost that Thanksgiving game against Houston. That was bad. This team has drastically underachieved the last 2 years. This team should have won the division last year. He had injuries to Cutler and Rodgers. They were in first place, and they gagged down the stretch. They underperformed their Pythagorean win expectation. It looked like they were a shoo-in to finish 8-8 and improve by 4. Yeah, this should have been, from a Pythagorean perspective, an 8.5 win team last year. Now, you can't win a half game, but I really, as I go back, what was their point differentials? Obviously, good. Hold on one second. It may have been a division best. Yes, it was. Remember I told you that stat when we did it? Since the realignment in 2002, before last year's Lions, there had never been an instance where only one team in a division had a positive point differential, and that one team didn't win the division. Ladies and gentlemen, year 2013 Detroit Lions. I like them over 8.5. I think it's Originally, I was kind of losing my mind and thought this was that team who maybe goes from non-playoffs to first-round bye. That's too big of a leap of faith.
Yeah.
With the deep, but this team, this will be the most exciting team to watch, I believe, in the league with that offense.
They will.
Calvin Johnson, Golden Tate, Ebron, Bell, and Bush in the backfield, Stafford. You cannot screw that offense up. Every game is going to be like 35-34 for Detroit.
Yeah, it is going to be exciting in that way. There's no question about it, but you just have to wonder in terms of that, again, how much is the offense going to be able to do to overcome the defense here? What are
the same could be said for Chicago and Green Bay. That's why I think they're in the
Green Bay really upgraded to a decent degree.
Yeah, and I think Green Bay is going to win the division, but to me, I like Detroit a little bit more than Chicago. That's something to monitor. Right now, I would take Detroit over Chicago.
Well, when we're talking about weapons here as well, keep your eye on as well for Detroit. You talked about you've got a situation with Bell and with Bush at running back here, and supposedly also they've got another fella here. I believe it's Theo Riddick, who they're talking about using as like a Darren Sproles type of guy.
I'm telling you, this offense could lead the league in points per game.
Yeah, they could, and still miss the playoffs. That's how bad the defense is capable of being.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that, again, first-year head coach, new voice, this team has underachieved for too long. They are a contender to get that last wild card spot in the NFC. No doubt about it.
I think this is the first time we've been able to do this, but I think going alphabetically, we actually stay in the division, right? Because I think Green Bay comes up next.
Yes, it does.
All right, so it's a very smooth segue here to talking about.
Yes, I like how this happens.
Yeah,
yes.
it worked out well here. What's the over-under for Green Bay?
10.5, and the juice is even. It's split, minus 110 on both sides. Typically, you want to go, I always like to go under, kind of on teams that are 10.5 or higher. I didn't with Denver, and I'm not going to here.
I'm not either. I'm saying 11-5.
I think it could be 12-4.
Could be.
This is my pick. Seattle is my pick to be the number 1 seed in the NFC again.
Yes.
This is my pick for number 2.
I agree with that.
A lot of agreeing going on with Green Bay. And the answer's obvious. They lost Aaron Rodgers for a good portion of the year. They named for like 6 games or something like that. They still managed to win the division. They should not have been able to steal that division. Mike McCarthy's never been my favorite coach, but kind of speaks. Maybe it just speaks to what choking dogs Detroit is and Chicago is.
Right.
But had they not made the playoffs last year, Green Bay, I told you this off air, had Green Bay not made the playoffs, they would be that obvious pick to go from non-playoffs to first-round bye.
Completely agree.
Even having made the playoffs last year, I still think they're a team who sees its win total jump pretty big. This is a team whose win total has decreased back-to-back years. Remember, remember the year after they won the Super Bowl, forget this, they were 15-1, looked like a dominant team, and then they ran into one of those lucky Giants teams and lost at home. I think this is the year they kind of not get back to that level that they were at, but a lot of people really like this team this year. I'm one of them. Green Bay bags the NFC North.
And I agree because in a relative sense, and we're grading by the very high curve of where Green Bay was coming into that game, they haven't been back since. They've made it to the playoffs, okay? But like every time they played San Francisco, pretty much they've been their bitch just about.
Yeah.
They have had an inability to, and we'll see. We're going to get a preview on opening night here of what I think is going to be the NFC Championship game, Green Bay and Seattle, because with them being the top 2 seeds. We're going to see how much Green Bay has made in terms of strides of matching up with the more physical teams here. They have, over the last 2 to 3 years, just been bleeding defensively relative to where they were when they won the Super Bowl, and they finally made some moves here. Now, again, guy who is the very epitome right now of the name meaning more than he does at this point, Julius Peppers. He is, however, still an upgrade for them out there, and a guy that they really, really needed. You get a quality impact safety, and that can have a nice ripple effect on your entire defense here. Clinton Dix slipping to them in the draft.
Yeah.
I talked about it with Baltimore before, like as a Browns fan, I hate when they get lucky. I'm indifferent when it happens generally to anybody else. With Green Bay, I was sitting there just as a fan of the league kind of applauding and saying, hey, well done, Green Bay. You got lucky. But that is really going to help them. That defense has squared up from where they were. They won 8.5 games last year with just historically bad quarterback play when Aaron Rodgers wasn't in there. He comes back at the end. They steal the division. They're not really going to have to steal it this year. Chicago, I think, is going to be breathing down their necks. You say Detroit's going to be breathing down their necks, but I think Green Bay in the end is going to be standing tall.
Yeah, this is a division that's going to be very tough. Last year,
right,
everyone kind of underachieved.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, the Green Bay is
right.
a very likely candidate to see its win total increase by a lot. And,
yeah.
wow, we kind of just pretty much agree. They're second seed. Now, it's interesting. I looked at their schedule before we spoke, before I came over. Starts kind of hard with the game at Seattle. Mm-hmm. No one would forgive them for losing. You'd like to see them be competitive.
Right.
It's in Seattle. Don't be surprised to see them start a little slow and then in the second half really get rolling.
Going to get an extra 3 days off after the Seattle game. No, that will help.
Yeah.
To be sure.
Hold on 1 second here. Let me go over the schedule, Stuart. It's pretty tough early on, but then after their bye is when.
While you're looking that up, I'll put this out there. There are non-divisional games this year: NFC South and AFC East. So.
Again, the South's competitive. All those teams are. You know, there's no real awful teams there.
But in the
East, you get New England
3-1 with a chance to go 4-0,
and then they also get New England at home late in the year.
Oh,
it's November 30th. That'll be a big game.
Oh, could be 4-0.
But here's the thing with Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
They open the year at Seattle, and they're at the home openers the following week against the Jets. You could probably pencil that in as a win.
There you go.
But then back-to-back division games at Detroit, at Chicago. Probably no better than a split there. You're probably looking at 2-2 for a team that I just said will go 12-4. But from there on out, they're at New Orleans too, kind of middle of the year. My
11-5 is looking a little better than your 12-4.
Yeah, but other than those three, I mean, I really see this team rolling late in the year. I see them rolling late in the They have 2 road games in the last 5 weeks. At Buffalo, doable. Buffalo might be out of it at that point, although according to you they won't. And at Tampa, which, is at least warm climate.
Uh-huh.
So they only have 3 road games, and then a lot of road. It's a pretty home-friendly schedule after the bye week, second half of the year. So I'm telling you, Green Bay gets rolling late in the season and gets that bye.
Late in the season? Okay,
yeah.
I could see that. Next up, we move back to the AFC, the aforementioned AFC South. The Houston Texans, what's the over-under?
7.5.
All right, same number I found. And I'll be interested to hear which way the juice is going. I'm going over, which some people would find counterintuitive based on how they were last year. But again, classic example of not as bad as they were last year, not as great as they were the year before. 8-8, and shocker of all shockers, I think this is one of my classic cop-outs that I do every year. When I'm picking a team to win the division, but they're in with a team that's better than them. Indianapolis is still better than Houston, but guess what? Tiebreakers don't care if you're better than. There's no objective person to sit there and rule, I'm giving it to the Indianapolis Colts. Colts will be better than Houston, but spoiler alert, I'm picking the Colts for 8-8, and I'm picking Houston for 8-8 and to win the division.
Well, if any team is due to be better in 2014, it's Houston.
Right.
This situation is going to be compared to Kansas City this time a year ago. Kansas City 2-win team, but new coach, and they jumped to 11 wins.
Mm-hmm.
I think we talked about this last time we spoke, as a matter of fact, about Houston. That the team with the first draft pick has been the most improved team in the league the last 3 years in terms of wins. The odds makers were hip to it last year with Kansas City. Remember, didn't Kansas City go into the year? They had a 7.5 or 8 win total coming off a 2-win year, and that seems crazy.
I was Chalky McChalkerson. I think I still picked low.
Yeah, I went over. I said Kansas City to make the playoffs last year. No, they won 11. I didn't say they'd win 11 games, start 9-0, but Houston is very, very clearly going to win a lot more games for Bill O'Brien than they did last year for Gary Kubiak. I believe this team will challenge for a playoff spot, will challenge for a division title. Indianapolis is due to regress after overachieving the last 2 years. I am with you. 8-8. The over is -150. The under's +130. So, again, people, they're buying into this whole fluctuation in the NFL.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like Houston over. The only thing that scares me, you look at the teams that picked first in the draft the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. 2 of them, Carolina with Cam Newton, Indianapolis with Andrew Luck, addressed the quarterback situation that way.
Right.
Kansas City went out and got the free agent Alex Smith. Houston's still got a gaping hole under center, and that's what scares me a little bit about this team. Ryan Fitzpatrick, I do not see him as a guy who can lead your team to the playoffs. And
well, is he a guy that can lead you to 8-8 in one of the worst divisions in football?
He couldn't lead the Bills to 8-8, could he? And remember, everyone kept thinking he would, and then he just
New
didn't.
England in this division. With all due respect,
yeah,
but
even that, I just
also
I'm just nervous. And if Tom Savage gets in there early, that's
He's
probably not a good thing.
He's a little more pro-ready than some of the other quarterbacks, albeit lower
I'm
ceiling.
interested to see how he looks in the preseason.
Yeah.
Maybe he looks great in the preseason. They just give him the starting gig.
Could happen. Because, again, that's Ryan Fitzpatrick's role, is to come off the bench during the season when the starter gets hurt.
Yeah,
you know?
And here's the thing.
If it ain't broke, don't
Tennessee
fix it.
started 3-1 last year, and then Fitzpatrick was the starter, and then they finished 7-9.
That's true.
Look, the defense is going to get better again. They won't turn the ball over as much now that Matt Schaub's not throwing pick sixes all over the field. So, yeah, their win total is going to increase big.
Right.
I'm just really nervous with the quarterback situation.
Well, you know,
Had Minnesota not leapt over them to go back in the first round and get Bridgewater, and they would have gotten Teddy Bridgewater, I would absolutely have picked Houston to win this division.
Absolutely. Clowney, Watt, and Cushing, though. I mean, you're looking at, what?
Woo!
You know, what's the over-under on sacks for that threesome there? 50?
Yeah, that's going to be devastating.
Yeah.
And Bill O'Brien, I think, is going to be a good coach.
Yeah, I think he's going to do a very good job also. Even if he did, in the course of his college career, get owned by Frank Solich on that very memorable occasion. We remember that. So.
I had Ohio U that day, plus the points.
Did you? Nice.
Won outright.
Gotta believe in the alma mater. It always pays to do so. Also, I believe at 8-8, as I indicated previously, next up for us, once again staying in the division, Indianapolis.
This is working well for us.
Now, I know that's going to be under, because the total I found was 9.5, even if that's not the most recent one.
It is still 9.5.
Okay.
Although there are some 9s out there.
Okay.
There are already some 9s out there, so the number's going down. Unders minus, this is, again, courtesy of the Las Vegas Hilton.
Okay.
Unders plus pardon me, I'm looking at Houston again. Unders minus 130, overs plus 110.
This is one of my stronger recommendations either way. Especially if it's a game and a half difference, which it would be now at 9.5. I got them at 8-8. Again, part of it is to call it reverse engineering, call it what you will. If there's only going to be 7 teams repeating in the playoffs, they're not one of the 7 teams I can go to the mat for. It's Houston by process of elimination. I can't pick Indianapolis for a worse record than Houston. I can't pick Houston for a better record than 8-8. Hence, Indianapolis will be 8-8. It's not any more simple than that.
That's very convoluted logic.
It kind of is. Again, defensively, still have some room to grow. Offensively, I think they've put together most of the pieces there. And mark my words, again, this shows my stubbornness, the depth of my stubbornness. This will be a bounce-back year for Trent Richardson.
It can't be any worse than it was last year. That's huge. It's interesting. This offense could be great. We talk about, the Detroit Lions to start this podcast. Great offense, terrible defense. This is another team that falls into that category. Andrew Luck is already a top 4 quarterback in this league, okay?
Right.
He is the reason that they have overachieved by 6 wins the last 2 years in terms of the Pythagorean expectation.
Also, too, on a defense that's not great.
Well, this defense is awful.
But Robert Mathis, one of the best players in the league. I mean, just got to give it to him outright.
This defense is awful, I think, coming in.
Notwithstanding him, though. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, even with the period of time of being out, I get that.
Yeah, I know, and that's the thing.
And that's, obviously that's got to be a factor there.
Yeah, so
I appreciate the nonverbal cue. But
yes, I was going to say. I just wanted to double check to make sure.
No. But I mean, still. Well, that's part of the reason I got them at 8-8.
Yeah, I think they could get up to a slow start. They open in Denver. That's not a good place. And I just think this team is due to start giving some games back from the last 2 years. What's their record in close games by 7 points? It's 15-1 the last 2 years.
Yeah,
completely unsustainable.
True.
Now that being said, you're a little maybe uncharacteristically ballsier than me in that I'm not ready to say that Houston can catch them.
Okay.
Here's the problem when I look at the AFC South, and that's great because we're going to stay in the AFC South with the next team
3
too.
in a row. How about that?
Let's take a look at the quarterbacks in this division, shall we? I did my quarterback rankings at home the other day. Andrew Luck was 4th, trailing only Manning, Rodgers, and Brady.
Okay.
Yes, I have him ahead of Drew Brees.
Is this non-fantasy?
This is non-fantasy.
All right, yeah, I would agree with that.
The other 3 AFC South quarterbacks were all in the bottom 6.
I can believe it, yeah.
And this is a quarterback league, and it's so hard to look past that.
True.
Now, at this point in time last year, remember, because everyone thought Indianapolis was going to regress. Remember, 2 years ago, they had the worst point differential of an 11-win team ever.
Right.
Everyone said, no way they repeat 11 wins. They repeated 11 wins.
Right.
Now, they were more like a 9-win team last year. They weren't quite as overachieving, but they overachieved nonetheless. I just think Luck Remember they said Akeem Nicks, too.
Right.
He had 0 touchdowns last year. And then they're getting Reggie Wayne back. But my point was, as I get back onto it, at this time last year, we were all giving Houston this division because we thought no one else was any good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little nervous to do the same with Indianapolis, but right now I will. But still, I'm with you. Under this team will not win more than 9 games.
In terms of receiving core,
I like this one. This is a definite recommendation for me.
Oh yeah, and I'll put this out there too. Our own Jason Jones, FDH senior editor, one of his biggest sleepers in the entire league, wide receiver Derrick Rogers, who he keeps saying,
and then
should
they have
been,
Hilton.
Yeah.
This team could have like 4 good receivers. I remember Jason telling me that.
Yeah.
And I was kind of with him too.
Yeah, and
Trent Richardson could be better.
Right. And my memory was correct as I look it up here. Mathis only going to miss the first 4 games, so he'll be there for the last 12. Again,
But 4 games is a long time.
Yeah,
to be without your best defensive player.
True. And a guy who's one of the, again, one of the best players in the entire league. It's, again,
the rest of that defense is not good, though.
They're not good, and that's what makes me look at it and say, that's how I can see them getting back to 8-8. I said this going into last year. I'm saying this going into this year. Medium term, long term, whatever. I am a buyer on Indianapolis, but there will be a season. I thought it was last year, and it wasn't. I think it'll be this year. They're going to take a knee one of these seasons before really becoming who they're going to become.
I agree.
That's what I'm looking
and
for.
the rest of the division is kind of in a rebuilding stage,
Right.
which is why you think that they'd be able to hold on this year.
Right.
Maybe it's next year, because keep in mind, Andrew Luck, eventually, they're going to have to renegotiate his deal,
Yeah.
which is going to lead to some ugly economics.
Well, this is a defense that needs a lot of parts as it is.
And they're not going to be able to get them if they pay Andrew
Through the
Luck.
draft, get impact players in the draft.
Well, if you keep winning the division, that's not. You're drafting
It's
the middle
harder,
to late rounds,
yeah.
and it's also you know what else makes it tough to get a
What?
good draft pick? When you trade your first rounder for Trent Richardson, your boy.
Yeah.
That was not a good move, Ryan Grigson.
I still say that. Well, look.
There's only one thing worse than trading a first-round draft pick for Trent
What?
Richardson, taking him number 3 overall,
Well, the Browns
taking
used
a
that.
running back number 3 overall. In a couple years, people will marvel at that pick, that someone would use a 3rd overall draft choice on a running back.
Well, this kid coming out of Georgia this year is going to be probably a top 10 pick in the draft. So we'll see. We haven't
Gurley?
seen
Todd Gurley?
Yeah, Todd Hurley.
Gurley.
Gurley. Yeah, he will be.
There is no way you could take a running back in the top 10.
Todd Gurley will go in the top 10. I think. I believe so.
Man.
Yeah, I
That's
think
a
so.
reach. That position, I don't like that.
Well, you have to at this point. You have to be a rare animal to be. But it's like if you're an absolute impact tight end, safety, in the rarest of instances, guard, then you can go in the top 10. Running back didn't used to be like that, but I think running back is now like that, where you have to be like the best of the best, not just of that year, but of the last couple of years to be really worthy of it. The other thing is, too, again, if the we keep going back to Teddy Bridgewater. If the Browns used that pick, and I understand they traded up marginally with Philadelphia to get him there, so it wasn't just the Trent Richardson pick that got Manziel, but there was some other stuff in there. But by and large, that was the foundation of it. The Browns used that for Bridgewater. I agree with you now, and I say that they won the trade. As a Johnny Manziel skeptic, I say the jury is still out, stubborn as I am, that the Browns won the Trent Richard deal. Johnny Manziel has to amount to something, and I am highly skeptical.
Trent Richardson has not had a strong start to his career.
He had 13 touchdowns his first year.
Yes,
in
like
Cleveland.
13 yards.
Well, goal line specialist.
Yes. Touchdown Tommy Vardell
Yeah,
all over it.
apparently
By the
so.
way, the Colts, their schedule is not very forgiving at the end of the year. At Cleveland,
Okay.
who I know, Cleveland is what it is, but that's a cold weather game for a dome team in December. That's never fun.
And as I
Then
said
they
before, a great defense.
Then they have a showdown at home with Houston.
Okay.
Then they close back-to-back road games to end the year at Dallas, at Tennessee. I know that doesn't sound super tough. But back-to-back road games,
Right.
It's tough to go 2-0 in that.
Well, and also, too, I've been in Tennessee in December. Don't sleep on that, okay? That is not a...
Usually doesn't matter when you go to Tennessee, what time of year. I mean, don't sleep on that. I mean,
Yeah.
keep driving. Keep driving.
Keep driving. Yeah.
Especially if you see the pilot flying J signs.
Oh,
I believe.
yeah. Very nice. Well, as you pointed out, we're staying in the division for an unprecedented 3rd consecutive team, this being the Jacksonville Jaguars. The number on them that I found was 4.5. Is that
It
still
has
correct?
since gone up to 5.
5,
Because
okay.
the juice was getting almost 2-1 on
Okay.
the over at 4.5. Because traditionally, what do I always say? 6 or under,
Yeah.
bet it over. So now we're at a flat 5.
All right.
And the juice is now even money on the over,
All right.
under -120.
So this takes away somewhat from the strength of my recommendation. But I'm saying over. I'm saying 6.
You think this team's going to get the 6 wins?
They're going to get 6 wins. Again, it's a garbage conference. It's a garbage division. They'll be playing the AFC North and the NFC East.
Not hard.
Yeah. I mean, opportunity to pluck some games
I
here.
like Gus Bradley.
A defense that's not too bad, and that's it, too. Gus Bradley, at this point, I can't say enough things about him, enough good things, because you look at how they started the year. And I guess my verbal tick for the day seems to be historically. I keep saying that, but I mean, a historically bad team.
Yeah, they were, almost a 4 TD dog to Denver.
That never happens. Yeah.
The game where I took Jacksonville plus the points.
Yeah,
easy winner.
I didn't have the nards to do that. You were right. But I will say this. To go from where they were at the beginning of the year to being a team that, again, and it was only the Browns, but to beat them on the road later in the year, by the end of the year, they were like, they're not a very good team. To go from historically bad to they're not a very good team is an amazing accomplishment by Gus Bradley.
Yeah, I think they were like 0-8 the first 8 games, and they went 4-4 the
yeah.
final 8. So
yeah, Gus Bradley kept them hanging in there and everything. Again, I like the pieces that they're putting together. Bortles is not nearly pro ready at this point, but Chad Henne, quintessential game manager. They drafted a couple of wide receivers. Allen Robinson, I think, is going to give them some decent production.
Yeah, I don't know about Marquise Lee, though.
I don't either. I don't really know that.
And when I say I don't know about him, I know about him, and I mean I don't know if he's going to be good.
But that's a guy that in the last year his stock has plummeted. That's a guy that should have been mid-first round a year ago, right? That's what they were thinking.
Yeah.
Going into the draft. He plummeted into the second round. Justin
didn't
Blackman,
have great quarterback play at USC last year.
No, he didn't. Justin Blackman, at this point, it seems like a bonus if they get anything out of him.
Yeah,
He's got the Josh Gordon disease there, so who knows? But, yeah.
I know you Republicans don't want to give any money for that disease because you don't treat it as one. It's interesting that you'd call it a disease.
I was doing so sarcastically. I should have been able to pick
excuse
up
me.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just, again, they strike me as a 6-10 bad team, not like a 3-13 bad team.
I said that they'd go 6-10 last year and looked very foolish when they were 0-8 or 0-9 or whatever it was. But then they, as you have so eloquently detailed, they fought back to respectability, finished 4-12.
Right.
But you know what? I do not like the over here at 5. This is going to be probably a push.
Okay.
I would like this team a lot more had they drafted Khalil Mack instead of Blake Bortles. I think they blew that because they're going to be one of the top teams picking again next year. And when you pick Blake Bortles in that spot, not only are you saying he's better than every quarterback in this draft, you're basically saying he's better than the quarterbacks in the next draft as well. And I do not believe that to be the case. Was not a Blake Bortles guy going into this draft. I think that was a bad pick.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though.
And, I mean, we won't see him this year probably.
Right.
But their pass rush was not good last year. They could have used, with Gus Bradley, they could have at least built one side of the ball and then addressed the other one next year. Right now, I'm not so convinced.
And I do think Mack is an impact player that it's hard to pass by. I will say this, though. As far as taking Bortles and the con, if you could have waited until next year, I'm going to go back to what I said at the time about the Browns. Really like Justin Gilbert. I think that was a fine pick by the Browns, but I desperately wanted Sammy Watkins, and that was before Josh Gordon went down, because with Josh Gordon and Sammy Watkins, you could arguably be looking at the top 1-2 combo in the league. And this whole notion that Browns fans, all the Facebook GMs that you like to cite, the whole thing of like, well, they got an extra first-round pick for the Bills next year. The problem with teams like the Browns and the Jaguars is they never plant their flag in the present day and go for it. At a certain point in time, you can't be saying, well, next year's quarterbacks, because what do we say about Marquise Lee? Devalued in the last year. Yeah. Who knows in the next year what we're going to be saying about Marcus Mariota or some of the other guys in next year's draft. Brett Hundley. Yeah, that's a guy that could be ripe to whatever with some of the passes that he throws, the way they flutter sometimes, if he gets overanalyzed or whatever. I can't completely fault Jacksonville for not living in 2015 because they have a horrible legacy of the last half decade or so to live down, Kyle.
Yeah.
Get off my soapbox now.
Yeah, I really think Khalil Mack would have been a better pick in that spot. I'm not going to come off that. By the way, I also like what the Browns did getting a draft pick from Buffalo. This is going to be a high pick.
Yeah.
You like Buffalo more than I
think it's going to be a mid-pick. We'll see. Next up, we stay in the AFC. Kansas City, and the number that I found here, which might be dated, is 8.
Flat 8.
A flat 8, okay. For the second year in a row, this year I think I'll be correct, I will go under. I'm saying 7-9 for Kansas City, marginally under. But you talk about teams that fall off 4 games or more. What could be more of a prime candidate?
This is the number one team. We're in total agreement here. I like the under. No way this team wins more than 7 games this year. They started 9-0, finished 2-5 in the regular season, gagged in the playoffs against Indianapolis. And some of the quotes coming out of that camp were not inspiring. Kansas City with Andy Reid saying it's going to take a long time for us to get over this one.
Right.
This was a team that had a massive difference in turnover differential from the year that they were bad. Last year, it almost seemed that everything went right for them. Remember, we were like laughing when people were considering this like a top team in the NFL when they were 9-0.
And there were Kansas City fans that were irate. They were considered an underdog to Denver when they played them. We're the most disrespected team in history. Now you're the luckiest team in history. You're about to get exposed.
I don't think even at 9-0, I'd have to go back, and longtime listeners can correct us. I don't think they were in my top 5 in the power ranking when they were 9-0. If they were, they would have been like 5.
I wonder where they peaked out at mine. I'd be interested
because
to see.
I just think this is a classic 2 wins to 11 wins, somewhere in the middle. And some playoff teams have to fall off. It's clearly that this was the number one choice.
How many times have we said that already? Like the truth is somewhere in the middle of the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And for Kansas City, that's not good.
Yeah, this is a very obvious decline. This is one of my favorites, under 8.
Yeah. Yeah, I like them at 7 wins. By the way, and I'm pulling up here the power rankings. You can find them in season, same place you find this show, the FDH Lounge multimedia magazine, the FDHLounge.blogspot.com. I did have, I had Kansas City. There were a number of weeks in a row there where I had them, let's see, starting with week 3, 4, 5. From week 5 on, 6, 6, 5, 5, 5, 5, 4, 4, and then 7, 7, 7, 7 to finish. So I had Kansas City pretty.
Yeah, that's pretty
much
accurate to me. I mean, that's pretty accurate. Again, I mean, you'd have to like go back week by week to see what had happened, who had lost one. But this was never the best team in the league.
No,
never a team that I thought was going to win the Super Bowl. You know, Alex Smith is basically a replacement level quarterback.
Yes.
Receiver situation here is not very good. You got to wonder when Jamal Charles is going to be able to.
I mean, he's a Hall of Fame caliber running back.
Yeah, but he's coming off the injury in the playoff game, remember? You got to wonder how quickly to recoup there. The defense fell way off in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
All signs point to a down year in Arrowhead.
They had a questionable draft in that they weren't looking to fill holes. They were sort of duplicating some areas of strength defensively, which was kind of this if there was a team that you said Carolina would be the other one. Right.
If you said that, I guarantee this team will win less games this year. Those are the two.
Exactly. Next up alphabetically is Los Angeles. Oh wait, that's the NFL. There is no Los Angeles team here. We don't need a team in L.A. We're bigger than that. Next up, I suppose we skip down to Miami, which this could be a point of big disagreement here.
I know this is one of your favorites.
Yeah, and again, personally, Miami, the 1A to my Cleveland Browns, so a big personal favorite over a period of time, but going way under with them, as I did with the Browns. Now, and I'm assuming it's way under. The number that I found was 8. Is that still?
Flat 8. Okay, sounds like a good number. It's how many they won last year.
I'm saying 5-11. I think it's implosion time because I don't want to say bad chemistry because that doesn't even begin to sum it up. But the poison in that organization, the off season here, again, Jeff Ireland being gone, I'll tell you as a Fish fan is a good thing.
Yeah.
But the way that it happened, that executive in the front office there, I forget her name off the top of my head, Dawn something or other. I should know it. But her and Joe Philbin basically teaming up to get rid of Ireland and then bringing in a new general manager that they think can be their puppet. This is just a thing of where I don't think Miami is going to have a chance to get better until Stephen Ross takes the broom to the whole organization. They're not there yet. They haven't hit rock bottom yet. As a Fish fan, I certainly hope this season will be it because I know it's coming at some point. I think it's coming this year. I've never been nearly as big as some people have been on Ryan Tannehill.
I was about to ask what your opinion was on him. I don't think he's going to be
tiny bit better than average. You said Alex Smith is replacement level.
He's better than Tannehill. I would rather have Alex Smith than Ryan Tannehill.
You would? Okay. I mean, I'd rather have Tannehill but
maybe just because he's younger, I guess.
Yeah,
but
it's like just the fact that that's our point of comparison here.
That's close. I think in my quarterback ranking, Smith was like 16 and Tannehill was 18, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that we're considering them even close to being the same guy in a quarterback-driven league and with a team that still has as many holes as they do, and a horrible reach in the first round for that tackle.
Yeah, well, that was at least they went after need.
Yeah, there were like
for
five better
Jawan James,
better spots on the offensive line.
I mean, this is a team that will be breaking in 4 new starters on the offensive line, thanks to your boy Richie Incognito.
And we talk about games won in the trenches. Oof. 5 wins, and yeah, that implosion, I feel pretty safe in calling it for this year. Miami is a big under recommendation for me.
I remember a couple months ago I was really with you.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like I kind of agreed with almost everything you said, that this is a team where it just looks like it's due to all go wrong. Joe Philbin, I'm not sold on him as a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
He was a fine, offensive coordinator for Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
But for all the reasons you said, I would lean to the under. Not as heavy.
Okay.
But they're just a very average playing team. There's nothing that I really like about this team.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that I really don't like, namely the offensive line.
That always adds up to a sub-500 record.
Yeah, so,
Kyle.
I mean, that division, besides New England, though, is just never very good. I could see this being like a 7-9 team.
Yeah.
I don't see them being a lot worse
That's still
than that.
under.
I don't know if 5-11 seems worst-case scenario to me.
Right.
There's another team in the AFC East that I think implodes.
Okay.
So we're kind of both picking an implosion in this division, but picking different teams.
Okay.
So I'll hold off on Miami completely falling flat on its face, but no playoffs again.
Okay. Next up for us is the team that Miami defeated in Super Bowl VIII. That would be, of course, the Minnesota Vikings. The number that
Who could forget that one?
Yes. That was a 23-7, or no, 24-7.
It was, yes.
The other game in Houston prior to the Janet Jackson Super Bowl, but
wow,
yeah, but at Rice Stadium, I believe that was the only one in the 70s that was not in that loop of like New Orleans, Miami, Los Angeles / Pasadena. It was the one that was out of the ordinary.
Very interesting.
As far as that went, yeah.
I used to know all that stuff. I had this Super Bowl book. I read it when I was sick.
Yeah.
One day from school, and I memorized everything. I can't remember any of it now.
Was it those books that, strangely enough, you could get like Super Bowl books like from McDonald's? Were those the ones that you had? Or maybe
No. This was a hardcover book. It had the Lombardi Trophy on it.
Okay, yeah.
I think my dad spilled some
the
coffee on it.
Yeah, I'm the world's biggest Super Bowl trivia geek. But yeah, Minnesota was the loser in that game, as they were 4 times in the Super Bowl back in the days. And I think we would agree this is not the year they're getting their first Super Bowl championship.
No.
The number that I found for over/under was 6. Is that?
Yeah,
it?
6. And I'll tell you what, that's about as good a number as I've seen for any team.
Totes agree. Yep.
Over -110, under -110. They're going to win. They're a 6-win team.
I got them at 6.
The problem here is, well, before we get to the problem this year, let's talk about last year.
Yeah.
Because you and I both loved the under last year.
Right.
That was an easy one. This was a team that completely overachieved 2 years ago to get to the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Their whole team was built and plan was kind of built around Adrian Peterson having another all-time great year. We both said that that's just simply foolish wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
They went from 10 wins in 2012 to 5 last year. They had a tie. If you remember, they were 5-10-1. But, they weren't actually as bad as I thought they might be last year.
Right.
In some points they were. The defense, the secondary was really bad, but Mike Zimmer coming over as head coach will help that.
Right.
They addressed the defensive side of the ball. But let's be honest, looking at this team this year, given how we all know the other 3 teams in the division are all going to be pretty good, 500 or above. This is a team who's got its eye on 2016, in my opinion. Teddy Bridgewater, it'll be interesting to see when he becomes the starter. Another thing you have to consider with the Vikings, they're playing their games outdoors this year.
Right.
The new stadium. And this was a roster, I don't know how big of an impact that will be, but keep in mind, this was a roster that was constructed with an indoor stadium in mind.
Yes.
And so that may be an adjustment. This is a team that played over half of its games because Detroit, they play at Detroit every year, played half of its game indoors. All of a sudden, almost all of them will be outdoors.
Yep.
Not a good thing. It'll be a sight to see, but Minnesota last place for sure in this division, 6 wins.
Well, here's the thing, too. I don't know if you want to answer this or not. I will answer it. The question being, what's more likely, 5-11 or 7-9? I say marginally, and this may surprise you, 7-9 is marginally more likely. I think Mike Zimmer coming in, I think Teddy Bridgewater being a pretty pro-ready quarterback, and I think he will be at the controls for a good part of the season here. You have a wide receiver core that's not as bad as they looked last year. I think 7-9 is marginally more likely. So if somebody puts a gun to my head, I say over.
The only problem is that, again, I don't want to pick this whole division
right
to improve its win total from last year.
That's true.
And I can see the other 3 teams, honestly, all improving.
That's a great
or
point.
none of them being worse.
Right.
Green Bay is going to jump huge.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of other wins.
And either Detroit or Chicago.
And either Detroit or Chicago is going to add a few wins to the pile. So there's just not a lot there on the table left for Minnesota. So that's why 6 is a great number for them.
All
and
right.
where they'll finish.
All right, great point.
Thank you.
Moving along in the conference to it's interesting how I haven't even thought of this until now. What the segue points between teams would be. The team that beat them to go to the Super Bowl back for the 2009 season, the New Orleans Saints, is up next. And when Brett Favre coughed it away for Minnesota in that game on the last possession. Number I found is 9.5. So that's still current. If it's
it sure is.
I was going to say if it went to 10, that could be problematic because I'm saying 10-6.
Yes.
I'm saying division champions.
Yes.
You won me over on that. I think when we did this the last time we were talking, looking ahead to next year, I think I was still going with Carolina. I'm off of that largely because Carolina's wide receiver core is worse. Yeah. Well, again, in the league these days, look at what I said about the Browns. Nothing turns me off quicker than a wide receiving core that is just awful. New Orleans is anything but. They add Brandon Cooks to the mix for next year. Defensively, yes, I still have some questions about that. Defensively, they still have a problem, or overall, but especially probably defensively, a problem with the cap because of Drew Brees and his whole gimme thing with his contract there, which makes it harder to fill the holes. Well, realistically, that's what happened.
Love the safeties here, though.
Yeah, safeties.
With bringing over Jerry Spurd.
And that's going to help big time. He's one of the best safeties in the league. Clearly, I mean, one of the best 2 or 3 safeties, no question about it. 10-6, and I think going to be in the mix for home field, although they won't get. Or I'm sorry, bye in the first round.
Yeah, I have them as the 3rd seed behind Seattle and Green Bay.
Yeah.
Look, other than the year where Peyton was suspended, this team wins 10 or more games every year.
Right.
They've got a great home field advantage. Carolina's going to regress, and I'm not as sold on either Atlanta or Tampa Bay being over to take the Saints. Yeah, I agree with basically everything you said.
The only thing that concerns me a little bit in looking at this, and I know from starting to get our fantasy coverage going for FantasyDraftHelp.com this year, they don't have an obvious candidate right now to fill the very critical Reggie Bush / Darren Sproles role in that offense.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about center. Because they've got a hole at the
too.
center spot, too, which isn't good either.
They do. I mean, right now it's Tim Lolito, I believe. Isn't he the rookie out of Grand Valley State?
Yes. Yeah. What do you know about him?
Not a whole lot.
That he went to Grand Valley State?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not a whole lot. I mean, that's you're looking at again, Pierre Thomas and Mark Ingram. It's funny because a lot of years they're kind of similar to Carolina as far as a number of bodies being in there but not getting the production out of them collectively in terms of like what you would think. Pierre Thomas, again, in the times that he has scratched and clawed his way to the forefront, has done a good job. You cannot say the same thing for Mark Ingram, and yet they're going to be counting on him fairly heavily this year too. So without an obvious scat back in there in the mix, that's been a critical part of the whole puzzle for New Orleans offensively the last couple of years. I'm not hearing anybody talking about it right now, so I don't know if I'm just a lone lunatic sitting here, complaining about something that's not an issue, or if I am the seer who is talking about something that will be on the tip of all of our tongues come October. I guess we'll have to wait until October to find out. It's
funny. I think not winning the division last year is better for them this year because I think it's going to motivate them because to
they
get the
gagged it. They totally should have had it.
Yeah, and it looked like it was theirs.
Yeah,
and Carolina just got hot and wound up lapping them. I just think that offense, that building, the NFL, first of all, you talk about issues. The NFL ought to be ashamed of itself for its treatment of Jimmy Graham. Roger Goodell strikes again, the dictator.
Well, if the man says on his own Twitter feed he's a tight end, isn't he a tight end?
Oh. That was a shameless go-to as well by the NFL.
He self-identifies as that, Kyle.
Well, that's what he's identified as by the league. What's he supposed to say? I'm a hybrid on there?
Notice that after that went down, Jordan Cameron changed his to I'm a pass catcher for the Cleveland Browns.
I think that was a brilliant move.
Well, maybe that's what Jimmy Graham should have done in the first place. But by the way, too, what this is...
It was nice to see they at least re-signed him.
Well, and here's what this is foreshadowing. I understand that, and this will come up in the next collective bargaining agreement, and the players probably will get their way. They may have to give on something else. I understand for offensive linemen, they don't differentiate. If you're one of the top guys, whether it's guard, tackle, or center. That is coming. In the next CBA, A, they're going to get rid of the differentiation between wide receiver and tight end because there's so much blurring in the league. I think that Robin Thicke has been singing about the blurred lines in the NFL between the positions.
Pop culture
Yes.
reference. His sales aren't doing so well in 20. You talk about regression to the mean in 2014.
When you dress at the MTV Music Awards like somebody who mugged a Foot Locker employee, you're going to have that.
I see.
Yes.
But I'm telling you, Kenny Vaccaro, Jarius Byrd is going to give this Rob Ryan some great safeties to work with. So let's not downplay what the defense can do. A defense that he improved. Saints, I completely agree with you. They win the division.
Agree. And
in NFC South, will be much tighter than last year.
Yes, it will. I've got all the teams within just a couple games of each other. I said coming into this that I thought the end of segment 2 was going to be the New York Giants, and I believe we're up to that already.
No, we missed somebody.
Did we?
Yes, I didn't want to tell you then.
You just let me go. You just let me skip over them.
Yeah, we missed the New England Patriots.
One
of the better teams in the league.
Okay, all right. So it's them and then the Giants here. So all right. What's the over/under you found for them?
10.5.
All right, same
which
number
seems
I found.
low.
Yeah.
Given that they pretty much always win 11 or more games.
Does that make me a sucker for going over then? Because I'm saying 11.
Yeah. Well, the bettors like it. The over's -165. The under's +145. We both saluted the coaching job Bill Belichick did last year with this team, given the amount of injuries.
One of his best jobs, yeah.
It's really hard not to go over here, isn't it? It just seems
In the
so
AFC.
easy.
In the AFC,
because,
yeah.
I mean, if they're not going to win 11 games,
Right.
who is besides Denver?
Right.
And I mean, usually there's a team that's going to win 12 games in the conference, at least one. It's usually 2. So it's really hard not to go over here. I guess I'd take the bait, but it's not going to be by much. This was a team that overachieved based on point differential a lot last year, but then again, a lot of injuries. They broke in that whole new receiving core for Tom Brady. They get Revis, which will be a nice piece to work with for Belichick. To me, the regular season's irrelevant for this team. They're obviously going to win the East. It's all about the playoffs. I know, talking to you a couple months ago, we both think this team can win the AFC.
Yeah.
Given that Super Bowl losing teams do not make it back
right.
to the Super Bowl. Has not happened since Buffalo.
Right. Almost happened last year. One Michael Crabtree reception away, perhaps.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
That's very true.
And
so
I had picked San Francisco to make it back.
Yeah, so
I was almost vindicated.
Yeah, so they're knocking on that door, but
But it won't happen twice in a row.
I would not bet the over on this. But
really?
No. Well, I'd say over, but it's not one of my favorites.
They're playing the AFC West, which is they're going to have some good opportunities there. NFC North, that's going to be tough. Here's what I will say.
The thing is that the own division, I mean, they always have that chance. They never do it seems.
Right.
But they always have the chance to go 6-0 and sweep the division.
6 games against those wusses in there. I will tell you this, and again, I don't want to oversimplify, but I mean, you have a situation, if you're doing a top 10 for the league right now, you have, I'm not saying that New England and Denver are your only teams. I could tell you when we get to them in the next segment, a third team that I think is probably in the top 10 of the league from the AFC, but they're not a slam dunk top 10 team. You have 2 top 10 slam dunks in the AFC. It could conceivably be 8 teams in the NFC that fill out the top 10 of the league. The imbalance between the conferences is glaring. How does New England get down to 10 wins? I got them at 11-5, and I feel like I'm being cautious on the Patriots this year. I have them at 11-5 in deference to the fact that defensively, yeah, there's still some holes there. Offensively, while Brady had one of his great workmanlike seasons ever, statistically,
he's kind of falling off a little bit.
He is. He's definitely falling off a little bit.
I had him number 3. I think Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers I would rather have them than Tom Brady at this point.
I totally agree. It's not even close in my book at this point. Part of it, again, though, he has no alpha male wide receivers. I mean, when Julian Edelman is your great hope at wide receiver there, it's not all on Brady. And yet he's being asked to carry the load there. So, but even with all of that, I feel like I'm being conservative in saying 11-5. If they had everything go their way with the weakness of the AFC, I would not fall off my chair if they went 14-2.
See, here's the thing. I either think they're a 10 or 11 win team. I don't think they're going to win as many games as I don't think they're going to win 30 games. No way. I don't think they win more than 11. I do not think they win more than 11 games.
I don't see anybody beating them more than 5 times, though, is the thing. I just don't.
Yeah, I know. That could be a dangerous game to play. I just think this is another one with the half that, it's going to be there. It's going to be right. It's going to come out of that last game, probably.
Well, I will say, as with individual games, you got to beware the ones where it seems too obvious, and this one seems pretty obvious. So I will say that's probably a trap. Okay, having skipped over New England, I believe now we're all the way up to the Giants, which will be the segment closer here. The end of part 2. The number that I found for them, I believe, was 7.5. Is that still
now
current?
up to 8.
This makes it even easier. I got them at 7 and 9. I say under. And by the way, I think I had them at. We did our early previews last winter for this upcoming season. I think I had them at 9 wins and winning the division. It's a fine line between first and last in football's worst division. But having said that, yeah, I got them at 7 and 9. Not impressed with their draft. Not impressed with the holes that remain defensively. That just scares the piss out of me. And again, Eli Manning, he won't have as bad of a year as last year, but Eli Manning is,
Had he not won 2 Super Bowls, who would like him?
He would be getting a lot of grief.
Not a top 10 quarterback, Eli Manning.
And that's the thing too, that for when somebody people look at a Matt Stafford.
He's in that. They're in the same category.
Yeah, and wonder about his ability to carry the mantle of a team without a dependable defense. Eli Manning is certainly the same kind of guy right now, where it's like it's all on his shoulders, but you don't feel good about it. Plus, then they lose Hakeem Nicks in the offseason here.
They did get Odell Beckham Jr.
They did.
Yeah, apparently you didn't like that, though.
A rookie wide receiver, though. In the rarest of instances do they make that big of an impact the first year. I know I've been talking out my ass about Sammy Watkins, but I put Sammy Watkins well above Odell Beckham for year one.
Odell Beckham Jr.
Beckham Jr. Yeah, excuse me. So I just have a lot of questions. The running back situation is really in flux. Too many questions in my mind. 7 and 9.
It always seems like every year I never have a good pulse on the Jets. And I always wind up picking them to go 8 and 8. Last year I picked them to win the division and go 9 and 7. That was wrong. They started very badly. They weren't that bad. They weren't as bad as they started when they started 0 and 6 and 0 and 7. It's interesting that they generally got blown out when they faced the teams that wound up being good last year, and they beat the teams that were bad on their schedule.
Right.
They lost 5 times by 17 or more points last year. It's a lot. They had a terrible point differential.
Yeah.
That even, it's funny, they had that horrible start. They wound up finishing 7 and 9. They exceeded their expected wins based on point differential.
Right.
But here's the thing. They also had a horrible plus-minus ratio when it came to turnovers. That's going to get better. This is such a hard team to figure out for me. I was like you a couple months ago and thinking, okay, the NFC's up for grabs. I can see them bouncing back and taking this, win one for the Gipper, Tom Coughlin. But I'm not as sold on them as I was a couple months ago, I think, on the ability to bounce back. I think 8's a great number, and that's where they finish.
Well, and again, I always reserve the right to revise my judgment based on the offseason. I have not been impressed with what they've done in the
defensive
offseason.
line is not, needless to say, up to the caliber of 2007.
No, it's not. The only thing that gives me even a little bit of pause in writing them off here is that both 2007 and 2011, those were both cycles of a couple of years of disappointment leading up to a run that came out of nowhere. So we're almost due for another one of those. Although I would say that it probably won't come next year, but it could come the year after, because if you go back to the winners of 2008 and 2012, the man who has been absolutely, this is one of the great pieces of NFL trivia ever, the man who has been absolutely unstoppable after the Iowa caucuses is Eli Manning. What a record he has coming
yeah,
off
I guess so.
Yeah.
I
is
guess
there
so.
any cause and effect, Kyle Ross?
No,
is he excited by the political process?
Yeah, does he even know?
That's a much better question.
Does he even know how the political process works? God bless Eli Manning. I just think that this, to me, is the hardest team to figure out in the league. Them and Tennessee are always the 2 teams that I just never really know what to make of them, and they always kind of finish mediocre. It's funny. Last year was their first losing record since 2004, but they have not. The only years they won a playoff game were the 2 years they won the Super Bowl.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll leave it on this note, Kyle. There should be a cold chill running up the spine of Tom Coughlin, because I'm going to refer to some show history here. Who did we say this about last year that we had the hardest time getting a read on in the NFL? Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
How
yeah,
about
we
that?
did. Yeah, and things did not go well. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, his boy Greg Schiano too. Yes. Then how that worked for him. Yeah. I mean, Tom Coughlin, coach, but I was surprised he wanted to come back. Didn't it kind of seem at some points last year? It's like, he's like, screw it, I'm done doing this.
He couldn't even muster his usual hateful intensity at various points
Yeah,
in time
yeah. It just seemed like he's like, I won 2 Super Bowls here. Whatever happens, happens.
Coach, you seem a little bit less red-faced and belligerent than usual. Are you losing your coaching enthusiasm?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, if they're the Tampa Bay of last year, then that's going to be going down the absolute toilet. But, I suppose to bring it full circle, isn't that what last place in the NFC East really is? Right down the toilet? I mean, if they're there where we think they may be, or where I certainly think they will be, last place in the division, albeit marginally.
Wow, you've got them in last place, huh?
Last place, the only 7-9 team. I got everybody else 8-8. Spoiler alert for the third segment.
I joked with you before I could maybe just pick all 4 NFC East teams, go to 8-8, and I'll just guess which one I think will win the division. I may still do that.
I'd love to see that. It would really embarrass the league to have one of their flagship divisions all go 8-8.
A real move the needle division.
Thank you, ESPN boy.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and the Periodic Table of Elements.